This conference will now be recorded.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the May minutes.
I'll move to approve the May minutes.
Okay. And
Thank you, Matt. Great, thank you.
And
Bill, any comments on the May minutes? We do appreciate Cheryl Mitchell, developing those and producing them. That's great. She did a good job.
I was going to say Cheryl is with us also.
Oh, good. Oh, hi, Cheryl.
But we're having audio problems with her. She can hear us, but we can't hear her.
Okay, that's great. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the May minutes passed, so that's great. So we wanted to give an update on the South Willington Village regulations. John, I didn't know if you wanted to give a little bit of an overview of any amendments or changes that you may have made to those
Maybe
documents.
that's why Rick left.
Oh. Okay, hold on. All right, Cheryl just left. She had I kind of wanted to get some. I haven't made too many formal changes yet. Mike was still waiting to hear from someone at the meeting who had some comments about the potential map on the project. So
Okay.
we're kind of waiting to hear from that. Hold on. We actually, Mike and I lost our server this morning.
Okay.
So a lot of the backup data we have is actually in old emails that when we were sending stuff around. So we're still kind of recreating the data that we may have lost. I think nothing is irrecoverable, but some of the notes that I have on the draft regulations, I'm gonna have to recreate. So
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's I don't have a revised draft for you ready today.
Okay, that's fine. I know that, the one comment about the building height was apropos, so we would want to make that adjustment to the building height. So we would want to wait and table the regulations until the next meeting. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Any comments, Matt or Bill?
No comments.
I missed that meeting. How was it received? Was it favorable with regards to any public attendees? Having read the minutes, I could tell you it sounded like it was a very favorable meeting.
Yeah. I mean,
go ahead, John. Sorry. Yeah.
No. So I think there were a couple of people there that raised very legitimate questions. Some people that had clearly read the draft regs, which is good. It wasn't a huge crowd, especially given the fact that Mike and the town hall staff sent out around 80 invitations, largely to the condos alongside the river.
Mm-hmm.
But some people had some legitimate questions, some inconsistencies with other parts of the regulations, and then relative to the sidewalk plans, one neighbor in particular, the one that has the retaining wall, had some real concerns about sort of loss of her front yard, and who was going to reconstruct and maintain the wall and that sort of thing. So it achieved some of the aims, and is to sort of get some of those concerns out in the open. But I thought in general that the group was pretty receptive.
Yeah, that's reading in between the notes. It sounded like that. Good.
Well, good. So we'll table the regs for the next meeting, and we'll try to make those adjustments to it. John, I don't know if you could get the meeting up on YouTube. I think that might be helpful. I know that Tom Giussino had contacted me and wanted some of his friends and neighbors to view that meeting. I didn't know if that was possible. Yeah.
Yep, we'll make sure it gets up shortly.
Okay, good. That sounds good. And then we'll just wait for the next meeting. We'll take a peek at those again. Let's see, the second item on the agenda there was the sidewalk. I don't know if there was any feedback or any update you wanted to give, John, on the sidewalk.
No, so I think Mike was going to get some. Well, who's still waiting, I think, for feedback from. I think wanted to meet with one of the particular neighbors, and then was going to go and look for some potential tweaks with the design engineer. But I think otherwise, there wasn't really that much. Basically, aside from the one neighbor, not that much controversial that needed to be reconsidered.
Well, that's great. I think the reception, Bill, for the sidewalks was really positive because now we're going to go all the way up to the Fish and Game Club. So we're going to get the design done and engineering done for that, and DOT is going to bring that project all the way up to Fish and Game. So that's great. And Matt, did you have any comments on the sidewalks, or Cheryl?
Yeah, I had a question. I can't recall. Did we have a representative from the church would attend that meeting? I think we did, didn't we?
No, the church rep was not there, as far as I know. It was just a resident, and Tom was all that I recalled. Okay. So I think that's kind of still open for comments and adjustment, amendment, and I think getting that that YouTube video of the meeting up will probably help too, and anybody can view it, and then we'll take comments again at our next meeting.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Good.
Makes sense. Yep.
Good. Third item on the agenda is the rail project. The only update that I had is I had heard that River and Rail was leaving town. I haven't confirmed that. Yeah. Okay. There you go. So thank you, Cheryl.
So you can hear
River
me?
And Rail.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Cool. All right, I'll shut up now.
No, we want your input. So River and Rail closed. Cheryl, do you have any update on that? I think that they were moving, is my understanding, from town.
Yep, they are, Rick. Katie got a job out in Iowa, so they're trying to sell their house in Willington. And when I reached out to her personally, I've known Patrick, as you know, for many years. We did Little League together for many years. They just never, unfortunately, recovered after COVID. So, and it's a shame because they were really kicking butt when before COVID, when it was up and running. There was always people there. Anybody that drives by knows, but they just said after COVID, they've just never recovered. And she got a job out in Iowa, so they're selling the house and they're all uprooting and going out to Iowa. So
wish them luck on their
that's kind of a staple in our town. You know what I mean? It's very sad. So
it is sad. I mean, they'll be greatly missed.
They will be missed.
Yeah. It was a great place.
Okay, so Bill, why don't you give us a bit of an update? Is there anything new?
Yeah, there is actually. Mike and myself and John and Phil Desiato, the property owner, we met on April 16th, and Mike and John brought a very capable individual with them, Peter Parent, who was going to look at it from the intersection of the property off of I-74, the feasibility of it. And he gave a very candid appraisal that it would be a big stretch for the DOT to okay that intersection simply because of how complicated it is right now between 74, the railroad tracks, and the Desiato, the Santilli Park there. I still call it Santilli's. And just said it would be a plaza, exactly. We'll call it the Lots and More Plaza. How's that sound? So he gave us his honest appraisal, and Phil was there to hear the words. And I guess the way we left it is we're going to retool and take a look at accessing the property off of 32. And I'm going to give you my honest appraisal. from 74, coming off of 84, and then taking the Y intersection there past the plaza is a difficult intersection for a truck. From 74 to 32 South, I have difficulty with that intersection myself, just seeing the traffic coming up 32 or coming down 32 heading south. Exiting the facility, and then there's limited sight, but with the tractor trailer there's even more limited sight. So I think that limited sight is on the 32 north side. And then finally, the reverse of the Y intersection, head on to 74 with traffic coming again on 32 north. I think all four of those intersections with a tractor trailer, especially hauling gross weight of about 80,000 pounds, is a concern. I think the town will have a hard time with it. I think the residents will have a hard time with it. The project investor, again, if it's a sizable investment, I think they'll have a hard time with that. And as you can hear in my voice, having done this before, I would have a hard time with it. So I really think retooling or accessing it off of 32 North would be a difficult sell in town, as well as with the project investor. But what I'd like to suggest is taking a look or brushing off the state property file or the interest that we looked back in June of 2020. And at that time, I think we gave it a good shot, but there was also difficulties associated with the state and the environmental concerns. We were dealing with the DEEP as opposed to the DOT, and they have 56 acres there that does butt the railroad. And I just think we ought to kind of formalize an approach that might make sense in talking to the state, formalize an approach really, because I have not walked the property, but I will do that if we agree that we should brush off the file and take a look at it again. I think we talked about addressing it with Joe Courtney and taking somewhat of a, I won't say political because that's not a proper word, but taking a look at it from the standpoint of Connecticut and making an investment. The state and the NHCR, which is this railroad, has a great relationship and a history over the past 3 or 4 years of making some major investments down in New London, as well as on that track, which they have upgraded it from handling. It's been upgraded to handle gross weight of about a little over 280,000, and that is premier rail, and it costs a lot of money to do that. And they've done that all the way from New London up to the Massachusetts state line. So they have a history of making an investment in a project like this, and I think it's time we start looking at that, because I just don't think access over 32 is going to work. My thoughts.
So that's interesting, Bill. At the meeting and some conversation after with Pete Parent, the engineer, indicated that he didn't think the turn between 74 and 32 was, prohibitive. There was some discussion that we would want to make maybe to close off that Phelps cut across, close it to southbound traffic, I think, so that it's just northbound. So you'd prevent trucks from kind of cutting it off and then trying to merge back with 74 at Phelps Plaza. But just the straight 90-degree turn coming off of 32 heading to 74, coming off of 74 heading to 32 wasn't prohibitive. It's not ideal, but so we probably want to talk about that a little bit more. Obviously, you have more experience with moving trucks around. But as far as if I can just sort of piggyback on Bill's report of our meeting at Desiato's, we did a little bit of follow up Mike and I met out there with a soil scientist who was good enough to donate some of her time, because there is a portion of the Desiato property that he basically, dug out and had used kind of as um, sort of an extra storage area, and had, occasionally it was a bowl that had occasionally filled up with water, and on a lot of aerial photos had water in it, but didn't really look like a wetland in the same way that wetlands are sort of colored on aerial photos. So we took it, and we didn't know if this was developable or not. So this is basically the area alongside the tracks just south of the main driveway. But we brought
it's the area that's south of the crossover, correct?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's right at the crossover. And so we brought a soil scientist out there, and she did some test pits, and he's like, nope, it's wetlands. It's absolutely wetlands. So we sort of answered that question in terms of, total developable acreage, or where you wouldn't be able to do some of this development. And it's, that would be more useful because it's right alongside the track down an embankment, and it would be useful if we could fill it, and it could be additional siding length, but I think it probably is not available to us. The next step from my perspective was I had Bill had put me in touch with Ed Foley, who's one of the railroad guys, about next steps, and he suggested that what the town and Mr. Desiato and perhaps the rail should do is kind of start positioning this as a developable site for rail exchange. And before we want to, and I can get Pete Parent or someone to do sort of a preliminary sketch on it, but I wanted to get some input from Ed and Bill about just kind of general massing, what the rough size of these buildings, the rough size of the loading area, the rough length of the siding, parking. So, sort of a sketch on a napkin that we could turn into a simple civil drawing. So I sent out, and Bill, I'll send out again, because I don't know if it got through to you or Ed.
No, I have it. I have it.
Okay, so just a basic aerial drawing, or an aerial photo that I would like you and Ed to kind of sketch up, so that we could kind of convert it into a civil thing that we could start maybe doing some marketing on the property. But I would like to hear more, and maybe Bill, you and Pete Parent and I, maybe Mike, should get together again and just kind of talk about the turning movements.
I'm agreeing with you, but I'm also trying to give you an appraisal of how an investor will look at it. But what I guess I'm trying to say here is I think we ought to go down the road with two projects.
Yep.
And one is this one, and continue to do the work and get it on the railroad's website so we can get some interest flowing on it. Right. But at the same time, I think we're going to run into some objections on that. And a contingency plan, or in development contingency plan, would be to start up the discussions again with the state.
Okay.
So we can, either as a primary or as a backup. I just think those attributes of the intersections that I talked about will be a hard sell when it comes down to the town and or the residents.
Sure.
That's my gut. That's my gut.
No, I can ask around again.
I think having the state come in and kind of assist us in this evaluation, I think is certainly helpful. John, what would you think that would look like? Would that be getting to economic development or DOT, or I'm not so sure.
I think my sense is it's going to be pretty high level. I think we probably want someone in the governor's office,
okay,
or someone pretty high up in economic development, because it's not DOT land, as Bill pointed out. Yeah, it's DEP land, which is, you know, I don't know if it's truly state park. It's owned by DEP, so it's within sort of a general park umbrella. It's not a formal state park, so it wouldn't be that difficult. But DEP is not going to just say go ahead. So it would be a matter of someone above DEP, which would be someone real high up in either EDC or DECD, maybe OPM, Office of Policy Management, or the governor's office that would kind of say, yeah, we're willing to talk about disposing of some of this land.
Sure. Okay. So why don't we do some preliminary evaluation of it, so we don't totally preclude it, and see if it does meet some of our criteria. And then that would be probably Bill, contacting the landowners and certainly doing a site, or the abutters, and doing a site walk, looking at access out of the site, obviously, and seeing if it is practical for use.
Yeah, I'll actually try to access the tracks off of the Knight and the Becker property there, which butts up against the Connecticut land, and see if I can walk the property. It's 56 acres, but that's misrepresentation of how much acreage is actually there to develop. I guess, kind of, so I can summarize. I know I surprised some of you this evening. We'll continue to go down the road with Desiato and go through those steps, but I'd rather have something brewing if we run into some roadblocks that we think will be insurmountable, so we're not starting from scratch again, if you know what I mean. And when you're dealing with the state, it's obvious it's going to take a while to get some interest or find the right person to talk to, which you just brought up, Rick. So I think it's a prudent idea to dust off the file again and start putting some energy towards that.
Good. Yeah, I think that's fine, and I'm happy to go over and walk the site with you one afternoon. That would be great. Let's start looking at that in addition. Great.
Well, as long as the humidity is not 70% on that.
All right. Well, good. Thank you, Bill and John. Any comments for Bill and John? All right. That sounds good. So we're down to new business. Matt, Cheryl, Bill, any thoughts on any new business items for the commission?
I don't have anything.
So I had, go ahead, Bill.
Mine is a question. It's not new business, but I love face-to-face. When do you think we can start meeting again?
Hopefully soon.
Yeah, I think we'll probably hear something in the next week about what the legislature decided. I know there's a bill in there about ongoing virtual meetings. I think ultimately what they'll end up with is that allows towns the option that you can do in person, you can do hybrid, you can do virtual, and all of them are okay with freedom of information. A previous version of the bill had said that you would absolutely need to do some electronic component, even if you wanted to get together in person, that you would need to make it available to people via teleconference.
Sure.
But it's not clear that requirement ended up in the final bill. So I suspect you'll be able to get together again in July, or as soon as July. Again, if they approve it at the town level, if Erica, says it's okay. Or the selectmen, I suppose.
Great, thank you, John. Matt, did you have any comments or questions? I know that you had. So go ahead. Yeah.
So I had some citizen interest in usage of the property down next to Dunkin' Donuts and Dollar General. Apparently, there's been some conversation on Facebook that I don't belong to anymore. Regarding some usage of property and someone living maybe in a building and trucks and cars, This, they weren't sure whether or not this business was licensed, but it was, and so I don't know. I'm not familiar. I haven't driven by yet. I just heard about this yesterday. I'm just wondering if anybody else has any input or has heard anything about this issue.
Matt,
Yes,
the last thing, if I could interject for just a moment, the last thing that I had read on that Willington Friends and Neighbors page or whatever, that somebody was going to be reaching out to zoning to figure it out, because Joe, from anything printed, seemed like he's very upset by what's happening over there. So I think that they're supposed to be getting zoning involved to figure out what's going on and what that business is.
Right. So as a process, kind of what would happen is you would have a complaint that would be filed. It would go to the zoning enforcement officer, and then the zoning enforcement officer would do a site visit and make sure that it's compliant with the regulations. And if it isn't, bring it back to the zoning commission for action. And then if somebody's aggrieved by that, they can always appeal it to the zoning board of appeals. So yeah. That would be the process.
I'll reach back out to our citizen and indicate that it's going to be going to zoning.
I didn't catch that, Matt. What did you say?
I'll reach back to our citizen and indicate that it'll be going to zoning.
So I don't know, has someone communicated this with Mike as zoning officer?
Well, I know that Mike had commented on the Facebook post, and that had been his kind of request. You know, file the complaint, and then he would pursue it.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Anything else for new business?
No, just a quick question, if I could, as John knows, I was having audio difficulty at the beginning. So I know that Matt made the motion to approve the minutes. Who seconded it?
Bill Jenkins.
Did. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Cheryl. Any other comments?
I will reach out to John and Rick, anyone else who was interested, just let me know, and taking that walk, and we'll see if we can put a date together over the next couple of weeks to walk the property.
Great.
That sounds great. Thank you.
And
we'll pick a cool day.
That sounds good.
Exactly.
and Bill, if you're able to do a little sketch for me of Desiato, that would be really, really helpful.
One more time.
If you could do that little sketch on the aerial photo of Desiato's.
Yep.
That'd be great.
I will. No problem. It won't be to scale.
Go ahead, Bill.
Don't worry.
No scale bar on Bill's sketch.
Pay extra for that.
I'll use some old Monopoly pieces. How's that sound?
Perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, and I hope you have a nice 4th. And I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.